We know for a start that countries like America, Canada, and Russia have biological weapons factories. I visited one in Russia called Novosibirsk in Western Siberia. It's bigger than Kampala. They make Ebola, they make cholera, they make anthrax. And while I was there, they taught me even how to make plague. They exist. The biggest in America is called Fort Detrick in Maryland. Most of these organizations like CDC, Center for Disease Control, is a military institution. The National Institute of Health is a military institution. Their leaders and their workers wear military uniforms and have military ranks. It is not a civilian institution. The first outbreak of Ebola happened in Germany, in a place called Mobile. The monkeys were from Uganda, and they were developing the vaccines for polio. So they were taking viruses from monkeys, and they mutated to form Ebola. The second time it appeared 4 years later was in Los Angeles, in California. The monkeys again were from West Nile. They escaped, and they caused Ebola. Then, after 4 years, we begin hearing Ebola in Kinshasa, in Nangalemba Hospital. We then hear Ebola in Sudan, and repeatedly we have had Ebola in Uganda. From 1984, we have battled with something called AIDS, HIV and AIDS. Our scientists have mimicked everything that America has told us, and France has told us, and Europe has told us. And it would take me a whole day to dive into the science. But I just need to point you at certain things that you can meditate on. Number one, the test that is used in this country, known as the rapid test, is banned in some countries like Germany. The rapid test is not allowed in Germany. Why? Because it's totally worthless. It is completely useless. They even write on the paper, the insert that comes with it, that this should be used only for laboratory diagnostics, not confirm the presence or absence of HIV in human blood or antibodies against it. It is written on the inserts. Look for any person who has AIDS. I come and stand here. I'll take their blood and put it in my arms. I will take the blood of a HIV positive person or an AIDS person and put it in my blood, and I'll go home and I'll be here next year to be able to tell you that I did it. They say it is sexually transmitted, but it is not in semen. How is it sexually transmitted when it is not in semen? They say it is sexually transmitted, yet amongst discordant couples, the transmission rate is only 5% in Uganda. This is a virus so lethal that it actually jumps off the genitalia of a man. Yet I can't give it to my wife in 95% of times, and my wife can't give it to me. When you say, what about discordant couples? Professor Peter Duesberg, a member of the American Academy of Science, only 8 people are on the American Academy of Science. Peter Duesberg. He stated in 1987 that HIV does not cause AIDS. In the history of humanity, not a single retrovirus has ever caused this disease. Lac Montagnier, the discoverer, who was given the Nobel Prize in 2008, I can show him to you on tape saying HIV's contribution to AIDS is benign. Now they are talking about cofactors. That it alone is not sufficient, that you need cofactors. A few months ago, I went to interview Dr. Cole from Malago Hospital. He's the head of AIDS program. It's not technically called the AIDS control program. Recently, I was talking to Dr. Kwari. He's the first person who discovered it and said, tell me, Dr. Kwari, how does HIV cause AIDS? How does it destroy the body's immune function? He says it kills the host cell. What percentage of the host cell does it infect? 5% per milliliter of blood. And I said, then it must be stupid. Because if it destroys the host cell, it will die itself. Then there will be no problem. HIV can't be that ridiculous. It's like I have a bomb, and I'm a suicide bomber. You know, I destroy this, we'll all die. I won't be there to cause any malice. Then, if it only infects 5% out of 1,000 cells, how can it cause a disease? So, the military in most countries is always the most strategic. It is always the most one last man standing. You must be the people to get a team and sit somewhere and say, we need to see the science. We need to see the evidence. I can give you a list of 600 professors from all around the world, from Berkeley, from Harvard, from Howard, including 8 Nobel Prize laureates that have signed and says HIV does not cause disease. But if you really want to know why you are being told that it does, you look at 2 things. Number 1, you follow the money. Number 2, you look at the statistics. In the whole world, they say HIV kills 1 million people. The whole world. AIDS, that it kills 1 million people. 89% of the dead are in Africa. 89% are in Africa. 11% are in the rest of the world. How many people die in Holland of AIDS? 3. Sweden, 4. England, from 1985, 15,000. Country population, 72 million. How many of those are from Africa? Living in England, 90%. Isn't that amazing? When Thabo Mbeki in 2003, he called a panel of world scientists, including the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and every organization, and the so-called CDC. He said, show us the virus. You know what they did? They couldn't show him the virus. Instead, they attacked Mbeki. They called him mad. They called him a crank. They said he's destroying people. Mbeki is saying, listen, if we are to die, is it the virus or is it malnutrition? Or is it poverty? Is it our living condition? Show us! They couldn't. Instead, they satirized him and allied with Mulema and the current president, what is his name? Zuma, to remove him from the president. But his minister of health, one of the most decorated ministers, one in the area of science, looked and said, there is no science. There is no evidence. Instead, they removed him as the president. In Uganda, when you are declared in 1993, when they failed to have enough people to test positive because of the worthlessness of the test, by the way, the co-inventor of HIV, Robert Garrow, was convicted for fraud by the Department of Integrity of the National Institute of Health. Robert Garrow. He's the one who gave the test. For every time you test, the United States government takes $1 and France takes $1. So when you hear saying, let us have massive test, you follow the money. The Ugandan government spends $700 per AIDS patient on retroviral drugs. He pays it to pharmaceutical companies. So they take out of Uganda over 700 million. Now imagine having a disease which they say will commit you for life. There is no cure. Except you can take taking all these antiretroviral drugs that cost a lot of money. If I was a pharmaceutical company, don't you think that's a comfortable position for me to be in? Can't you see that? Follow the money for HIV. Don't die of ignorance. Don't die. There is no evidence that HIV causes AIDS. No! Go and look for websites that talk about virus myth. Look at the scientist and read the science. Get a scientist who claims all these are Purichu. There's a doctor that writes, Dr. Watiti, he writes in the New Vision. I went to see him at Mild May. I went with my cameras. I said, Dr. Watiti, tell me, if I come here to test, what am I supposed to go home with? Am I supposed to go positive or negative? He says, no, you need to go negative. I said, but negative is a bad thing. How can you encourage me to be negative? He says, no, you need to go negative. I said, okay, tell me, how does the virus enter my body? He says it can go, it is sexually transmitted. And I said, it is not in semen. It has never been found in semen. So where is it going to pass to transmit sexually into my body? And he says, I'm not a virologist. You are the one who writes in the newspaper to say that Dr. Cole told me that I am not a scientist. My job is to translate science into policy. And I said, yes, but it must be science first. Before you translate it into policy, it must be science. So one of the things that I beg you, really implore you, not to believe what I'm saying, but to research, to go and look into it. Don't just follow what everybody else has told you. You're supposed to be the last man standing. You're supposed to have your own team that looks at every information and passes evaluation. And thank you very much.
You say the black, for us with the black skins, we are the one with this melanin. But why now our life expectancy is very shorter than the white man who doesn't have this melanin? Why it comes like that?
Because